from the heart of the city too busy to hate. A progressive voice making too much sense for corporate media's comfort. This is The Ron Show, where we the people come first. Here's your host, Ron Roberts.
Hello, and thank you for listening. Weekdays, 8 and 9 a.m. on Georgia Now, 4 and 5 p.m. the replay in the afternoon, 11 p.m. Progressive Voice via TuneIn and wherever you podcast. I don't know if you know who Marcus Farrell is, but let me explain. He is the man behind the Marcus 4, number 4, America social media empire. We'll call it an empire. Yeah. YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. I'm sure he's on TikTok. I haven't checked. Anyway, Marcus for America is, as they describe it, where politics, black history, culture, comedy, and truth-telling collide. And these videos that he concocts, I'm assuming these are AI-generated cartoons, but they're really good. Anyway, it's the commentary behind them that really stir the drink. Marcus Farrell is a political strategist, organizer, professional, caller, outer of nonsense, he writes. And on that channel, he breaks down American politics, black history, current events, voter power, culture wars, hypocrisy, propaganda, and the stories they conveniently left out of the textbook, the description on his YouTube channel conveys. Yesterday, he released his latest work, and it is a commentary on the Democratic National Committee choosing not to bring the Democratic National Convention to the city of Atlanta in 2028. Take a listen.
Mayor Andre Dickens said the DNC cutting Atlanta from its 2028 convention shortlist was deliberate. He laid out Atlanta's case. Then he said they are abandoning Atlanta, abandoning the South, and once again, abandoning black voters. Now, that was the statesman version of what Atlanta feels. But I ain't the mayor. Let's get into it. The DNC likes to be white. It is that simple. The same power player instinct that poured $16 million behind Alexander Vindman while Angie Nixon built an actual grassroots movement looked at Atlanta and said, too much base. Find us a Whole Foods with a convention center. Boston, Denver, and Philadelphia over Atlanta? Shouted, we were prepared. We just hosted 8 World Cup matches. 8! The world came through Atlanta, 8 wings, and made its flight connection. But the DNC got nervous because somebody down here might ask why its consultants keep losing the South, then invoicing everybody for the strategy memo. Denver, I love you. Legal weed, but Colorado has voted Democratic for president 5 elections straight. What does the DNC need there? A smoke break? Y'all trying to workshop protect democracy at 9,000 feet while sharing an edible? Boston feels like a donor said, I am tired of Delta first class. Can we take the Acela? Great city, wrong year. This ain't a consultant's convenience retreat. Philadelphia? Oh, y'all missed 2016. Debbie Wasserman Schultz resigning after leaked emails exposed party favoritism. Bernie delegates booing. Chants on the floor. Unity held together with zip ties and Beyonce. Choosing Philly feels like the DNC triggering the progressive left for nostalgia. What else do we have to do? Keisha Lance Bottoms won the Democratic nomination, and early polling has her leading or tied in a governor's race Democrats ain't won in more than 20 years. Georgia Democrats just flipped 2 statewide public service commission seats that Republicans held. We delivered Georgia for a Democratic president. We delivered 2 Democratic senators. We just showed you, again, how to beat Republicans in the South. Y'all should be knocking down the doors of the King Center and Magic City, trying to stand somewhere near this excellence. Come study the organizing. Come meet the voters. Come learn why Virginia to Texas watches Atlanta. Instead, the party says black voters are its backbone, then holds the family reunion everywhere except the Black House. Mayor Dickens deserves credit for saying it plainly. Retreating to safe spaces ain't courage, and ignoring the South ain't strategy. I love Boston, Denver, and Philadelphia, but this ain't your year. DNC, you did not choose the future. You chose your comfort zone. And somehow, your comfort zone got the whitest guest list imaginable. Bless your hearts.
Again, that's Marcus Farrell commentating, as did Mayor Andre Dickens, who released a letter in the aftermath of the Democratic National Committee choosing not to bring its 2028 convention to Atlanta. Now, I don't know how sure a thing that was going to be anyway. I'm not sure how well the pitch packages were based from each city. Who knows? That's not something that, we all are privy to seeing. We're not on that committee, and that committee doesn't release the mounds of sales pitches made. It's like the Olympics. It's like the Super Bowl. Many cities try. Only one city gets to win. Mayor Andre Dickens releasing this letter yesterday. He writes, to Atlanta, the South, and all Democrats, the DNC continues to make the wrong choices. What a strong first line. Good God. The DNC continues to make the wrong choices. This decision could not have been based on Atlanta's ability to host major events. Not on the heels of being ranked the best city to host the World Cup. Not when State Farm Arena is one of the busiest and most successful arenas in the country. Okay, that has a typo in it. I corrected it, but it has a typo in it. Okay. For the DNC to not even include Atlanta in the shortlist means that the DNC does not consider Atlanta or Georgia relevant to the past, present, or future of the Democratic Party. This is a midterm election cycle. There's a lot on the line. Democrats need to win the Senate race that Jon Ossoff is currently polling well ahead in the office he maintains, he would like to hold on to. Democrats have a chance to retake the state house, the state senate, governor's mansion, lieutenant governor's mansion, or there's no mansion with the lieutenant governor's office, but the lieutenant governor's office. We had Josh McLaurin on just the other day. And yet, in this moment, Mayor Andre Dickens, mayor of Atlanta, felt it important to write that sentence. For the DNC to not even include Atlanta in the shortlist means that the DNC does not consider Atlanta or Georgia relevant to the past, present, or future of the Democratic Party. That's saying a lot. I think it's based on emotion that he wrote that. I don't think it's correct. But again, he's stung. The city is stung. The state is stung. I get it. He continues, it seems that Ken Martin doesn't even believe himself when he said that the road to the White House runs through the South. Yet again, the DNC and Chairman Ken Martin have shown that they are unwilling to do the bare minimum to support the base of the party. Atlanta is the crown jewel of the Southeast, the black economic engine of the country, and the cradle of the civil rights movement, he writes. They are afraid to leave their comfort zone and blind to the fact that the South is the answer. They are abandoning Atlanta, abandoning the South, and once again abandoning black voters, he writes. Again, we're in the midst of a midterm election cycle, and the mayor of Atlanta, who I have to think has aspirations beyond being mayor of Atlanta maybe one day, I have comments on that, felt it important to write that sentence in the midst of an important election cycle. He said the DNC is afraid to leave their comfort zone and blind to the fact that the South is the answer. He says they are abandoning Atlanta, abandoning the South, and abandoning black voters. Black voters that Democrats need in order to win in 2026. Jon Ossoff has to run with the Democratic brand attached to his name. Keisha Lance Bottoms as well. Josh McLaurin, House members, state senators, yada, all have to run while the mayor of Atlanta, a Democrat, says that Democrats are abandoning black voters. I get the emotion behind it. I really do. I think it's very short-sighted. I think it's very self-defeatist. It's not very team sports. It's very sore loser. I get it. I want the convention here too. But I'm not going to write stuff like this in the midst of the 2026 midterm cycle. These are the sorts of conversations that should be had quietly, internally. You should be telling this to Ken Martin privately. Maybe you did. I don't know. But you released this letter. It's all over social media. In the midst of a cycle where we have to, at least on the surface, look like we're all working together towards a common goal. Dare I continue reading this letter? Atlanta has not hosted a convention in nearly 40 years. He's right, 1984. One party has chosen the South to host their convention, and the other has chosen the same region over and over again. This isn't by accident. It's an intentional choice, he writes. At a time when Trump and the Supreme Court are minimizing black electoral power, we need a party that would come to Atlanta and galvanize the Southeast for 2028 and beyond. Real leaders produce for the present and the future, Dickens writes. With so much evidence to the contrary, this was an opportunity for Ken Martin and the DNC leadership to show they have a thoughtful plan for the party and know how to win the White House in 2028. But instead, they're running scared and retreat to their safe spaces. I'm ready for Democratic leadership that understands what every Democratic voter already knows, that this is a moment that demands we run toward battles and into the fight. Sincerely, Mayor Andre Dickens, City of Atlanta. I should correct myself, by the way. It was 1988 the last time the City of Atlanta hosted a convention. It was 1988 here in Atlanta. I believe that was the Mike Dukakis. Yeah, that was the Mike Dukakis run, right? I think the thing that I remember most about that convention wasn't the nominee or the vice president, Lloyd Benson. A very forgettable ticket. It was the Rob Lowe sex scandal, if I'm not mistaken. That was the year the Rob Lowe sex scandal became yes, kids, we had sex scandals back in the 1980s. And Rob Lowe was, as he is now, hot and handsome. And yeah, that's the takeaway. Anyway, that's irrelevant. Mayor Andre Dickens penning that letter felt very instantly emotional, very like an outburst, like telling a kid they're grounded, and the outburst, the things that come out of a kid's mouth to a parent, they don't mean, they're just very emotional. That's what that letter felt like, and I found it to be fairly irresponsible. I don't disagree that the DNC has made the wrong choice. I disagree in the messaging, and that is one of the things that shows me anyway that if Andre Dickens has aspirations beyond the mayor's office of Atlanta, I think he's not prepared for it yet. And to be honest with you, maybe, just maybe, Andre's history as mayor of Atlanta plays a crucial role in why the Democratic National Convention looked at Atlanta and said, that's... Keisha, these are the things. Okay, we've talked. Let's keep it real here. I'm going to keep it 100. Keisha Lance Bottoms, if she were to be governor of Georgia in 2028, will still be the former mayor of Atlanta, and there is her history as former mayor of Atlanta that we all have to kind of, walk through this battlefield and miss the landmines on. And then you've got the Atlanta Public Safety Training Facility that she backed, that Mayor Andre Dickens doggedly backed, in the face of a lot of opposition at the grassroots. The party that wants and needs the grassroots energy, bringing its convention to the city that built the Atlanta Public Safety Training Facility in the face of that grassroots movement. The city that woefully, inadequately delivers mass transit, that is mired in gridlock, and the current mayor having the opportunity to invest in mass transit in the city via Beltline Rail, set it back at least a decade. Perhaps, Mayor Dickens, that and the public safety training facility and the infrastructure situations that have popped up here and there. We've had water issues, 2 years ago? Not his fault, not of his making, not even of Keisha's making. Decades, we had a pipe that burst that dated back to the Civil War, right? I mean, Sherman didn't get it. I get it. It's not all his fault. I'm just saying, cumulatively, this stuff sort of adds up, and it creates some headaches, I think anyway, that may have had whatever this ad hoc committee to choose where the convention is going to go. It may have given them pause. Maybe. It's not in his letter. I understand why it wouldn't be in his letter. But I also think that a lot of what was in his letter didn't belong in his letter for public consumption. It belongs in a conversation to be held privately with Democratic power brokers like Ken Martin. Those are my 2 cents. It's The Ron Show. Georgia Now, Progressive Voice via TuneIn or wherever you podcast. Now, to give a little more background on how this all came about and why I believe that Mayor Andre Dickens was taken by surprise on this and seems to have just lashed out in such an emotionally charged manner. This comes from the Politically Georgia podcast written by Greg Bluestein at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. It blindsided city leaders who say that they learned of the snub through the media. Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens releasing that scathing response that accused the party of retreating to, quote, safe spaces. In fact, it was Michael Smith, spokesperson for Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens, who said, "It's unfortunate to learn of this via the press. We will have more to say on this in the future." I mean, it didn't take much of a future, though. He just blurted that letter out And obviously, it's obvious he did not consider the ramifications of the midterm election cycle, right? If you don't think that kind of letter is the sort of fodder that Republicans are going to use and run with, back to the Politically Georgia blog, which wrote that Dickens and state Democratic leaders told party officials during an April visit that bringing the convention to Georgia would send a message that the party sees the South as crucial to its future. Atlanta's what's right for this country, Dickens said during the visit. Atlanta represents what the Democratic Party needs right now. The city's sales pitch included major projects such as Centennial Yards and new attractions like Cosm, which is in Centennial Yards. Dickens said Atlanta represents what the party needs right now, and he was even more pointed about the city's rivals. He said, the DNC has the opportunity to leverage Atlanta's culture and our cachet. Boston is history. Philadelphia is played out. Denver is nostalgia. Why is Denver nostalgia? Atlanta is now. Oh, Denver because Obama. Okay. Bluestein writes, the pitch wasn't enough. The three finalists all have more recent experience hosting Democratic conventions. Boston hosted the gathering in 2004 when John Kerry was nominated for president. We lost that. Denver landed Barack Obama's 2008 convention. Philadelphia staged the party's 2016 event for Hillary Rodham Clinton. Do we need to go back there? I mean, figuratively and literally. Of the three, only Philadelphia sits in one of the nation's presidential battlegrounds. I pointed that out. Pennsylvania backed Trump in 2024, while Massachusetts and Colorado are Democratic bastions. When Democrats chose Chicago for the 2024 convention, it was a devastating setback for Georgia leaders who hoped the event would showcase the state's rise from Republican stronghold to premier battleground. Back then, organized labor favored Chicago, citing Georgia's right-to-work laws, which are still in existence, and Atlanta's relative shortage of unionized hotels, which is still a thing. And organizers were impressed by Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker's assurances that the party would not be left with convention debt. Similar questions surfaced during this year's competition. Wild boosters pointed to Metro Atlanta's biggest perks, the world's busiest airport, thousands of hotel rooms, and a Mercedes-Benz Stadium that has already hosted one Super Bowl and is set to host another in 2028, a college football playoff title game, and World Cup matches. Now party leaders go back to the drawing board. Atlanta hasn't hosted the Democratic Convention since 1988. We mentioned that. Michael Dukakis, blah, 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 blah. They don't mention Rob Lowe. Well, how good of a researcher are you, Greg Bluestein? I'm kidding. Dickens said the party's leaders squander the chance to show they have a thoughtful plan to win in 2028. Instead, he wrote, they're, quote, running scared. You know, it's one thing to talk about 2028 and what Democrats' plans are to win then. It's the knee-jerk, reactive, emotive letter that you release, Mayor Dickens, that puts 2026 in peril. In the Georgia Recorder piece on this from Maya Holman State, Senator Rashawn Kemp also expressed disappointment with the decision. Georgia is the cradle of the civil rights movement and ground zero where Republicans are going to try again to disenfranchise and silence black voters, and the Democratic Party made a horrible decision in excluding Atlanta. They had an opportunity to show that the base of this party is respected and their voices need to be heard, and Atlanta should have been at the top of their list. Charlie Bailey, chair of the Democratic Party of Georgia, said his organization would continue working to elect Democrats during the midterm elections, regardless of where the convention is held. Georgia is the premier battleground state in the country. The road to the White House in 2028 will come straight through Georgia, whether or not the Democratic National Convention does. Not from Atlanta, but near to Atlanta enough. Representative Roman tweeting, I actually think Mayor Andre Dickens is spot on with this. Party people keep saying black voters and black women are the base of the party, yet don't bother to invest in the region with the largest concentration of black voters. There's no path to power without the South. Again, I don't disagree with the reaction to the decision. I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. I don't disagree with those that believe that the decision is a poor one to have made. The Democratic National Convention made a poor decision here. Nothing against Denver. Love Denver. Great city. Boston, Philadelphia, fantastic cities. I also understand the things that would count as shortcomings for the city of Atlanta. However, in this moment, in this era, in this political climate, I think Atlanta made the most sense. And for the life of me, I don't understand how Atlanta fell short. Is this some sort of unease that, well, what if Keisha doesn't win the governor's race and Democrats can't retake the House and the state Senate? And or what if something happens in Ossoff? Georgia's a battleground state. It will be a battleground state for a while. It's right there on the precipice of I think turning blue and being a formidable blue stake in the ground in that rock-ribbed, ruby-red South, that conservative, ironclad Confederate portion of the country that Democrats want to make inroads with. They want to see Florida become a swing state, right? You want to see North Carolina become a reliable, swingy-ish blue state like Georgia can be in the very near future. I think will be in the very near future. It does. It sends a poor message. I don't disagree with the rationale behind the reaction. I disagree with the emotions in the reaction and the language being aimed at the party on the whole in a midterm election cycle. This is The Ron Show. It's Georgia Now, Progressive Voice via TuneIn.
This is The Ron Show.
Heard 8 and 9 a.m., 4 and 5 p.m. weekdays on Georgia Now, 11 p.m. Progressive Voice via TuneIn and wherever you podcast. It's this is one of those things that like I've seen happening in the suburbs wherever I've lived for a long time. It's the subheadline in an AJC piece written. Who wrote this? Sorry, Zachary Hansen, writing about the haste to develop. There's like one or two spots way outside in the, I think the exurbs, the very fringe of the metro Atlanta suburbs anyway, for a new hockey franchise. They want to do essentially what the Atlanta Braves did, either in South Forsyth County or Alpharetta in very northern Fulton County, if they can, what Cobb County did for the Atlanta Braves to lure the Braves out of the city of Atlanta, this time for an NHL franchise. And at the heart of one of the developments at the North Point Mall redevelopment project in Alpharetta is some hand-wringing over housing. Zachary Hansen writing that, and it took a while to get to this part of the story, but he wrote that 4 letters loom over the plan to redevelop North Point Mall in Alpharetta. 3 of them are NHL because the project's developers vow to create a space worthy of a professional hockey franchise. The last letter, as some local officials have put it, is the A word, also known as apartments. As soon as you mention the A word, people freak out, Alpharetta Planning Commission member D.C. Aiken said in a meeting last week to discuss the mall redevelopment process. Jamestown Properties, the developer behind Pond City Market and operator of Alpharetta's Avalon, aims to transform North Point into a sports-anchored district capable of hosting an NHL team. In addition to a 20,000-seat hockey arena and practice rink, the plan includes up to 1,385 apartments, hundreds of hotel rooms, and new office and retail spaces. The proposal is approaching a critical vote Monday to change the mall's zoning, and city council members will decide how and whether the plan proceeds. Now, listen, I've weighed in on the thought of a hockey franchise or a development like this being built in Alpharetta or South Forsyth County. They're literally both competing for the same thing in hopes that the National Hockey League will expand to 30 teams or that a failing franchise might relocate to Atlanta, which would be the third NHL franchise in Metro Atlanta in my lifetime. The Flames fizzled out in the 1970s, early 1980s. The Thrashers, I still have a hat from the Thrasher era. I never went to a Thrashers game, though, because I didn't live in Atlanta at the time. Anyway, the Thrashers, they took off. I think they're the Ottawa, is that Ottawa Senators? Anyway, the thought that, well, you know, Atlanta United has shown that sports other than football, baseball, and basketball can succeed in Atlanta has given new hope that hockey might work. And I'm not disagreeing that hockey might work in Atlanta. I do happen to think, however, they're taking the notion that the northern area of Metro Atlanta is where the base of the sports ticket purchasers enclave is. The thought that all of the season ticket holders will live in North Metro, to me, is a little short-sighted. And I'm not sure that either Alpharetta or South Forsyth, Alpharetta would be better suited only, I would argue, only if they decide they're going to expand the MARTA line that goes all the way up to Sandy Springs and stops there. Doesn't go any further. It should go to Roswell. It should go to Alpharetta, both towns in Fulton County. It doesn't. And right now, MARTA's best option is, well, we're going to do bus rapid transit up 400, a little further. If I'm going to a hockey match and I live in Midtown Atlanta, I'm not driving all the way to Alpharetta to do it. Listen, I'm a huge Braves fan. Huge. Been a Braves fan since the early 1980s. I grew up with Claudell Washington and Bob Horner, Rafael Ramirez, Dale Murphy, Bruce Benedict. I can sit here and name much of the 1980s. Chris Chambliss. I can name Biff Pocoroba, Steve Bedrosian. Phil Necro, manager Joe Troy. I can name for you the 1982 Atlanta Braves lineup. I'm sitting here picturing it in my head right now. Glenn Hubbard at second base. I'm a huge Braves fan. It takes a lot to convince me to go to the Battery. And the Battery's much closer than North Point Mall or South Forsyth. It all comes down to transit again. But the point of me bringing this conversation up, however, is how in the suburbs, once again, it's this worry about the scourge of apartments, tenants, people who lease instead of own. Well, who the hell do you think is making your latte at the Starbucks? Probably someone who needs to rent. Waiting tables at that, high-end restaurant you want to go to. Selling you perfume and colognes at the store at the mall that you love going to. All those hoity-toity shops at Avalon. The people that work there, they're not salaried. They're not buying houses in Alpharetta. They're having to rent somewhere. Oh, and because Alpharetta they have this baked-in, home ownership. Where is it? I'll get to that in a second. They have this baked-in home ownership situation. You, by and large, if you need to lease, you can't live in Alpharetta, which means you have to live somewhere else, which means you have to be on the roads to drive to Alpharetta to work at these jobs, which, by the way, is time that you're not getting paid for. This is part and parcel to what is so wrong, about the American way right now. Sure, it's nice that you got that job. I'm talking to myself. You got that job in Sandy Springs. You got to drive 45 minutes to an hour and a half each day to get there, and that's time you're not getting paid. Gas in your tank, fuel, burned up, time, all of that stuff. You're not getting paid for that. You're not getting compensated for it. You can't report your mileage. Mixed-use districts typically rely on offices and housing to provide around-the-clock vibrancy and activity between sports matches and events, Zachary Hansen writes. Despite the pandemic's impacts on the office market, Jamestown's plan includes up to 750,000 square feet of new workspace. About 22% of Alpharetta's existing office space is vacant, Cook said, which is down from the post-pandemic peak of 25%. But new offices tend to lease better than their older counterparts, which actually just means that the impact on the rest of Alpharetta is going to be greater in both Alpharetta and across Metro Atlanta. This trend has city leaders and Jamestown officials confident that office needs to be part of the North Point plan. However, for sale housing is a larger challenge that doesn't fit this project, the developers' leaders said, which prompted pushback from multiple planning commission members. I think you're missing a really important component, board member Karen Richards said, of for sale townhomes or condominiums. I think people are going to want to live there and invest there. I disagree. Alpharetta requires, get this, 68% of the city's housing stock to be owned rather than rented, and apartments have long been a controversial development type in the affluent suburb. Richard and her fellow board member Jill Reynolds tried to add a recommendation to the North Point plan that would require 300 for sale units during a later development phase, but that proposal was outvoted. We don't necessarily want to be a junior Buckhead, Sandy Springs or Dunwoody, Reynolds said. We've usually always tied mixed use with for sale and rent. Julie Sellers, an attorney representing North Point's development team, told the Planning Commission that requiring condos or for sale housing would likely kneecap the project, saying, the challenge is we're not there now, referring to the condo demand in the mall area, and we're not going to be there in the first phase of the development. There is that. There is also the very real fact that it's hard right now for those who own condos to sell condos because condo sales are lagging. And Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, federal housing, mortgage lenders have just added more tougher, stringent stipulations on condo owners and the homeowners associations attached to them, and you have increased insurance demands in the aftermath of, well, a lot of natural disasters and, freak weather things that, used to be infrequent and are way more frequent now. I know this because as a realtor, I live smack dab in like a condo haven of Midtown Atlanta, and real estate activity in this area is struggling. I got a condo listed in Old Fourth Ward. It's a cool condo. It's in a great building. It's one I used to live in. Love this building. Great location. Best view of the downtown skyline ever. I mean, it's a fantastic condo. Every condo in the building is taking months to sell, and it used to be days or weeks in the throes of the post-pandemic buying frenzy. Attach condos to that, and you may have an initial wave of people who buy and then realize, condo living, because you live in the suburbs, condo living's not really for me. This whole shared space, and then the noise of the traffic of the pedestrians, and that street market vibe that it'll sound like on hockey nights or concert nights. Yeah, you're going to quickly realize you don't like that as much as you think you do. Let's see, back to the story here. Quoting Tim Perry, Managing Director and Chief Investment Officer at the Jamestown Development. Perry added that hampering all development work until an NHL commitment would also set the project back, saying mixed-use districts can't feel empty when they first open. He said Avalon opened with 60 tenants, and the Battery had restaurants, a bustling boulevard, and other elements in place when the Braves first took the diamond, and a lot of apartments, by the way. We want to get ahead and deliver a more complete experience on opening day when the puck drops, he said. That's what is important, something that feels complete. The Alpharetta City Council meeting will take place 6:30 p.m. Monday at 2 Park Plaza. The city also streams its meetings live on its YouTube channel and city website. That's something to keep an eye on. I still argue taxpayer dollars don't need to go to something like that. This is The Ron Show. So there have been, a handful of stories of, in name, I suppose, Democrats announcing their support for Rick Jackson, the Republican nominee for governor of the state of Georgia. Most of them are people who, it's kind of like remember Zell Miller? Zell Miller was a Democratic governor in the state of Georgia. I use air quotes here because he was a conservative. Zell Miller, a Democrat governor for the state of Georgia, constantly on the Hannity show, or radio and television, back during the Barack Obama era in the United States. Zell Miller was anything but a Democrat by that point in time. I mean, that's just the fact. Whether he, was comfortable announcing that he was no longer a Democrat or that he was, let's see how he voted. He was, for all intents and purposes, a Republican then. There are, a couple of, I think, sheriffs who say that they were Democrat. They're Trump backers. The one that seems to have caught a little bit of attention anyway in the conversation being had politically here in the state of Georgia is a fellow by the name of Billy Linville, a veteran of Georgia Democratic politics, longtime Atlanta mover and shaker, who, by the way, dresses just like Rick Jackson. I pulled up his, was it his Facebook? I pulled up his Facebook. There's a photo of him where he's dressed in the white dress shirt, slightly unbuttoned, and the dress jacket over it. And it's like, oh, I thought that was Rick Jackson or Rick Jackson's kid. They looked like they could be related. Anyway, Billy Linville is crossing party lines to back Rick Jackson. This according to the Politically Georgia podcast blog that came out yesterday from Greg Bluestein, Tia Mitchell, Patricia Murphy, and Adam Beam. Linville leading a new group launching today to steer Democrats and swing voters towards Rick Jackson in the governor's race against Democratic nominee Keisha Lance Bottoms. The group, Democrats and Independents for Rick Jackson, you can probably fit that meeting in a phone booth, is targeting the swing voters who have helped decide Georgia's last 4 statewide elections. They're also increasingly central to Senator John Ossoff's efforts to peel support away from his GOP challenger, Representative Mike Collins. Consider Linville's group an attempt to build a safe harbor for split-ticket voters in the governor's race, the blog writes. Linville, who said he remains a staunch Democrat, said he's known Jackson for more than 10 years and considers him a, quote, good and decent man who will represent everyone. Has he known him long enough to know that he's been a supporter of Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones? That he is donated to GOP campaigns I mean, I get it. Maybe he also knows that Rick Jackson's wife has been donating to John Ossoff's campaign. So, I don't know. Maybe there's something to... I don't know. Linville says, I also know Keisha Lance Bottoms. By any objective standard, she is the worst mayor in modern Atlanta history. She refused or was unable to lead and govern. Billy Linville, who I'm telling you looks identical to Rick Jackson, the way he dresses and photographs and kowtows. I'm not trying to be mean to him. I've never met him. I don't know anything about him. The launch comes on the heels of endorsements for Jackson from two conservative Democrats, Lowndes County Sheriff Ashley Polk, Dooley County Sheriff Craig Peavy. The Georgians joining us, okay, so it's three people. The Georgians joining us aren't abandoning their values. They're recognizing that a man who grew up in foster care and built a company employing thousands is uniquely positioned to bring this state together in a way a career politician simply cannot. Linville isn't yet ready to disclose more details about the coalition, which is coordinating with Jackson's campaign, but he said to expect more announcements in the coming weeks. I plan to communicate, remind, and inform Democrats and independent voters that, in fact, Rick Jackson is a better choice. Rick Jackson is a better choice, Linville says. Rick Jackson tells us he wants to be Donald Trump with a Southern accent, Billy Linville. And you're okay with that? He said, I don't agree with Rick on every policy position, but his life story and struggle are a window into his character. Speaking of the gubernatorial race, on the other side, the struggle that some Republicans have in maintaining their coalition is pretty evident. There is, of course, a lot of opposition within the Georgia GOP to Representative Mike Collins, who, again, blew out his whistleblower instead of his campaign manager and staff lead, or at least blew her out first when she made public the nepotism from that campaign manager, hiring his girlfriend to be a $10,000 a month intern. That's a pricey ass intern. I thought interns were at no cost. Anyway, there is a lot of that. There is still actually a lot of folks in the Georgia GOP who still aren't over the fact that that gubernatorial battle between Rick Jackson and Burt Jones was nasty. One of those folks who seems to still be stung by it is, well, Burt Jones himself, right? Fresh from today's Georgia Recorder, we have Jay Bookman writing that in much of the Iliad, the ancient Greek prequel to the Odyssey, now dominating the summer movie box office, the hero Achilles can be found sulking in his tent outside the walls of Troy. He is bitterly angry at his fellow Greeks, feeling that he has been cheated and disrespected and thus refuses to fight any longer on their behalf. You don't need me? Fine. Bookman, haphazardly quotes, I don't think that was in the Iliad, but anyway, even when the great king Agamemnon begs him to rejoin the battle, telling him that the Greeks are likely to lose without his help, the sulking, prideful Achilles refuses. Achilles, in other words, is exactly like Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones, or would be if Jones were the son of a sea nymph and not the heir to the Jones Petroleum Company, and if Jones were the greatest warrior in the ancient world instead of a former walk-on football player at the University of Georgia. Hey, Jay, friend of the show. Any football player at the University of Georgia is a football player at the University of Georgia. I'm not going to demean the fact that he was a walk-on, although he really did try to squeeze a lot of juice out of that berry while running for governor. Anyway, otherwise, though, pretty much the same, Jay Bookman writes. In the weeks since being outbid for the GOP nomination for governor by Rick Jackson, Jones has been sitting on the sidelines, nursing his anger at being cheated of what he thought was rightfully his. I would also argue that just the way Rick Jackson campaigned, and listen, it's hard for me to feel sorry for Burt Jones in any way, shape, form, or fashion, but that was a nasty-ass race. The fact that Rick Jackson used a foster charity to bait Burt Jones into recording a video bootlicking for Rick Jackson so that he could then use the video in the gubernatorial race is, it's ick times 10. It's so gross. Now, we don't know that Rick Jackson knew he was going to run for governor then, but it was only like last September. Rick Jackson knew. He was, I mean, you don't just haphazardly decide from September to March, maybe I will run for governor. Come on. That was all well coordinated. You had the shadowy nonprofit PAC that was running the Burt Jones attack ads before Rick Jackson even stepped into the race, softening the meat before he could get in there. Come on, we know. Anyway, Burt Jones has refused to reach out to Jackson, to appear with Jackson, to endorse Jackson, or perhaps even to vote for Jackson. Jay Bookman writes, that's trouble for Georgia Republicans who already face the likely prospect of losing the Senate race to Jon Ossoff. Humiliating as that would be, losing the governor's race would be considerably more consequential. The governor's office controls jobs, appointments, contracts. The governor, contracts. Rick Jackson seems to benefit from those contracts, does he not? Oh, he vows he's gonna curb those contracts if he becomes governor. Much the way Trump said he was going to curb his business dealings when he became maybe it's different. Rick Jackson says he's going to be the Donald Trump with a Southern accent, though. Back to Jay Bookman. The governor signs or vetoes legislation. The governor has a lot to say about redistricting and campaign fundraising. It's the governor, not some U.S. senator way up in Washington, who pulls the strings here at home. And in this difficult political environment, Republicans recognize that a divided party could cost them all that and more. There's a lot on the line here. Which is why I think it's important that the mayor of Atlanta, by the way, temper his tantrums. Back to Bookman. Like Achilles, though, Jones has cause to feel resentful and to stay out of the fray. He feels as though he was stabbed in the back by Jackson, whose surprise campaign spent $150 million trashing me and my family, as Jones has put it. Early on, Jones was so unaware of the threat posed by Jackson that he even recorded a testimonial of Jackson at Jackson's request, which Jackson then used against him in the campaign. Yeah, it's icky. That leaves a mark. At one point a few weeks ago, Georgia Republicans even recruited Donald Trump to play the part of King Agamemnon. Oh, he loves that. You mean I get to play king? To try and intercede with Jones. But like Agamemnon, Trump failed, which is surely his only point of resemblance to a king renowned for his greed, his thirst for power, and his willingness to drag his reluctant people into a war that nobody really wanted. Jay Bookman! I love that guy. Nobody should be surprised, though, he writes. If someone is acting like a sore loser, if someone is refusing to get over a narrow election defeat and instead spends most of his time nursing his resentment to the point that his soul curdles, is Donald Trump the person that you send to tell him to stop being selfish, grow the hell up and behave? This is gold. Jay Bookman is on fire with this one. He finishes by saying, I would love to have been a fly on the wall to hear that particular conversation. You know, I was on with Representative Dr. Michelle Au. She was on the show yesterday. And by the way, you can listen to that wherever you podcast or on the Georgia Now app or at heregeorgianow.com, ronshowatl.com as well. And I asked, because she endorsed former Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan, former Republican Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan, now a Democrat. Still a Democrat? Is he still there's been no activity on his social media since he conceded the primary. I asked a little bit about him, hey, have you talked to him? What's going on? Have you seen much of him? I asked that in particular because I wonder, is Jeff Duncan a Billy Linville type Democrat? Or is Jeff Duncan all in for Keisha Lance Bottoms, Jon Ossoff, Lieutenant Governor, gubernatorial candidate Josh McLaurin, Tanya Miller? Is he all in? I would personally like to see. I know he's been on CNN. He's got his paid gig, his freelance paid gig. I would like to see Jeff Duncan reemerging, and being a part of the campaign trail. I mean, this is the sort of thing that I always said, pay your dues, buddy, before you run. This is the opportunity to step forward and start paying your dues if you have, aspirations for 2028 or 2030 or 2032 to stem the whole Billy Linville thing, which I don't think is much of a thing anyway. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. We air 8 and 9 a.m. weekdays on Georgia Now, 4 and 5 p.m. the replays, 11 p.m. at Progressive Voice via TuneIn, wherever we podcast. Show notes as always at ronshowatl.com. Have yourselves a great weekend. We'll be back here Monday.